Atlantum. Princess Lumina of Onda was well named. She was luminous. All eyes were on her as she seemed to float into the grand ballroom of Atlantum. Her short, wavy blonde hair and translucent skin were complemented by her green eyes, and her sea-green, halter-neck silk dress with a long skirt into which hundreds of miniature crystals had been hand-sewn. She wore no jewellery except for sparkling diamond studs in her ears and a single pearl ring that gleamed on her right hand. Ambra admired the princess as she waved at the crowd before being seated. The princess's mother, Queen Crescents of Onda, wore a floor-length ivory jacket with a high collar over a silver dress. Her white blonde hair was cropped short, and around her neck was a heavy silver necklace. Both wore silver tiaras decorated with mother of pearl, which glowed in the evening light. After the Queen was seated, Chancellor Aroz gave a short speech welcoming the Queen, the Princess, and the guests. The Queen's blue eyes smiled as she surveyed the gathering. Aroz led the crowd in a joyful rendition of Happy Birthday for the Princess, and then 1,000 people sat down to enjoy a marvellous feast. As vast as the grand ballroom was, it began to fill with the scent of delicious food. There was every type of fresh seafood imaginable served on platters of ice, along with a variety of dishes from both Ondan and Terran cuisines, served by elegant, fleet-footed waiters in black ties and coat-tails. "This food is incredible," said Jevon through mouthfuls, though Ambra was barely aware he'd spoken to her. She was lost in savouring the range of familiar and new flavours and textures. Dessert consisted of a selection of sorbets and the princess's champagne-flavoured birthday cake, decorated with sea-green mousse frosting and edible silver sugar shells. The sun had set, and as its light diminished, the grand ballroom was lit with thousands of red and gold fairy lights, the perfect contrast to the blues and greens of Atlantum. As Ambra and Jevon finished their dessert, they caught sight of a tall, gangly man urgently weaving his way through the hall towards their table, his gaze fixed on Quill. His bushy grey eyebrows were knitted together. Quill rose as the man approached the table, and his face creased into a smile. "Mabul, how lovely to see you," greeted Quill, spreading his arms wide. "Greetings, sire," said Mabul, his face serious. "Oh, come now, such concern. It's the princess's special birthday. Won't you have a glass of iced coral tea?" "Perhaps later, sire. May I have a word?" "Of course," Quill said, rising from the table and leaving his napkin on his seat. The two made their way to a quieter alcove at the side of the ballroom, where Ambra observed them in deep conversation for about 15 minutes, Mabul gesturing animatedly. Quill's brow furrowed. Eventually, Mabul slipped away and Quill made his way back to the table. "Everything okay?" Ambra asked, looking for clues on Quill's face. "Yes and no," replied Quill. "What does that mean?" "That man, Mabul, is the head of Ondan intelligence. He has received reports that the night before last, a colleague of your mother's was violently murdered in Venice." "What? Oh no!" gasped Ambra. Quill pulled the front page of that day's raw prawn from a pocket inside his vest. He unfolded it and placed it on the table for the siblings to see. Along with the main image of the ornate bridge, there was also a photograph of a young woman. "Oh, I recognise her name, but I don't recognise her face from that picture," said Ambra. "That's just horrible. Do the police have any idea who killed her?" "We know who killed her, because the way this young woman died is the method of someone with a most unusual ability," said Quill, tapping the pictures of the bridge and the photograph of the dead woman with his forefinger. "What do you mean?" asked Jevon. "The victim was drowned and found on top of the Rialto Bridge. So whoever did it drowned her and then took her to the top of the bridge. That doesn't make sense," said Jevon. "Not quite." Quill pointed to the article, which was written in the Ondan script. She was killed by someone who applied the Narrayan kiss. Only 2 living souls have mastered the technique. Queen Nefaria of Nautilus, who has never visited Terra and is unlikely to, and her eldest son, the heir to the Nautilan throne, Necro. Narrayan kiss? What's that? Asked Ambra, looking apprehensively at Quill. Quill's steady blue eyes met hers. The Narrayan kiss is the rapid summoning of large volumes of seawater from within the lungs of those who know the technique. It is applied literally as a kiss, such that the victim ingests and inhales so much water that they drown. Ambra put her hand to her mouth. Jevon placed his hand in the middle of her back. The other part of Mabul's report that is not yet in the papers is that last night your mother was the victim of a theft, Quill continued. The materials her team planned to use in their media announcement have been stolen, almost certainly by the same person who murdered the young scientist, Necro. "Oh, God, is Mum okay?" cried Ambra. "Yes, she's okay, but because of the theft, the press conference has had to be delayed until I can deliver her the backup copy she entrusted me with. To minimise the possibility of it being stolen and misused, none of the rest of her team has a copy, and it is nowhere online or in the Terran clouds," said Quill. Ambra turned to look at her brother. "I'm not staying here. We have to go there, to Venice," she said. "How? We're in the middle of this massive structure in the middle of the ocean. We don't have the money to buy 2 international airfares. We don't have our passports," said Jevon. "And don't forget, we're here because Mum is concerned for our safety." She clearly didn't think flying us to her was safe, and it's certainly not with a lunatic like that on the loose. "And what's to say his next target isn't Mum?" countered Ambra. "The police are involved now. You don't need to put yourself in the middle of it," shouted Jevon, his raised voice causing pauses in the dining of nearby guests. Quill put his hand on Jevon's shoulder. "Given what we feared has unfortunately transpired, you can both safely come to Venice with me. Now that Necro has stolen that research, he will be long gone. And never mind planes, you will travel the Onden way, but I need to get permission from Aroz to take you. Just wait here for a minute." Quill made his way to the next table, where Aroz was loudly debating Onden Terran politics with another guest. "Ambra, we really should stay here. If Mum had wanted us to be in Venice, that's where we would be," said Jevon. "Let Quill take the backup to her." "I'm going there, and I will be another form of backup. I want to be gene-edited live during the media event," declared Ambra. "The hell you are!" Ambra rolled her eyes. "Well, unfortunately, Jevon, the only member of the team who was edited a year or so ago to be monitored and studied is the one who is now dead, which makes her a bit awkward to have as an exhibit. Anyway, Mum was going to be edited live during the press conference to maximise the impact of the announcement. But it will have more of an impact if she edits her own daughter, not herself, especially if her work is about to be hijacked. She'll need a big attention grab to counter it and protect her professional reputation. You're bloody well right it'll have more impact because you'll pass it on to any kids you might have. How do you know it's not going to be a problem for them down the track? They know it works in the same way they know this process works for editing for disease prevention, in the absence of someone actually getting sick. They can show the edit in the gene. Anyway, it's my choice, Jevon, whether you like it or not." "Mum is not going to agree to this." "I'll convince her. I reckon she'll go for it, especially if this Necro character is out there somewhere about to ensure a different version of what it all means is announced first." Quill returned. "Listen, Aroz has said we can use one of our rapid transit submersibles. It could get us to Venice in about 9 hours. From here? That's almost twice as quick as a plane," calculated Jevon. "Whoa, it must go at a cracking speed." "Oh, it does," said Quill, grinning. "I wish we'd had them in my own boy racer days. They've been engineered by the Ondans to move small groups much faster than these gargantuan pods that contain our cities. The Terrans don't know about our technology. They'd be so envious, but we don't trust certain groups of Terrans with such a gift. Not just yet." Quill looked at Ambra. "Don't worry, you will be perfectly safe. Come on, I'll show you." They left the grand ballroom and followed Quill to one of the many transportation docks that connected Atlantum to the wider world. Eventually, they arrived at a set of sturdy double doors made of metal, with a security keypad that blinked red and yellow. Quill's fingers played the keys and the lights changed to blue. There was a bronze plate on the door that was etched in both Ondan and English. High-speed submersible use without permission is an offence punishable by imprisonment. The doors groaned as they swung open. The sound echoed in Ambra's mind. She closed her eyes.